Hey everyone, welcome to this third video on reading comprehension. In this video, we'll specifically deal with the big picture questions. Now these questions check your overall understanding of the passage, and questions you will see like, what do you think is the central idea of the author? What do you think is the purpose of writing this passage? Or what do you think is the tone used by the author throughout the passage? So what I'll do in this video is I will discuss approach, how to attack these kind of questions, and we will also solve two questions on different passages to see that you are very good and your accuracy is up to the mark in these questions. Okay, so now there are three types of big idea questions. So one is the central idea or your primary purpose or main idea questions. Now these are very obvious. Now you need not read this passage to understand or to answer this question, because obviously if you've read the passage carefully, that means active reading, which I told you earlier, right? If you're reading the passage actively, that means if you're involved, you will obviously notice the central idea of the passage. Now typically you will see that right from the first paragraph itself, it's important for you to try to understand, okay, what is the central idea. So first paragraph and the last paragraph becomes very, very important. If you read those two passages carefully, 95% of the times you'll be able to figure out the central idea there itself. The other thing I would tell you is that please pay attention to repetitive words. That means if a passage is talking about Gandhi, Mahatma Gandhi, Gandhi again and again, that means obviously if the passage revolves around that 1, 2, 3 things, that means those things have to be the main idea, right? Those things have to be central to the passage. So these are some of the things that you should pay attention to. Now this is a very common question type that you will get on these big picture questions. Sometimes you will also get questions like tone and structure. Now you will not get these questions on tones and structure in, let's say, campus placements or your NET exam, but then some high level exams like CAT or XAT, ZAT is where you will get questions on tone and structure. But it's always good to be prepared in advance. So let's say if a question comes on tone, you should be able to handle it. Now what is tone? Tone is nothing but the choice of words the author is using and something that tells you that, okay, is the tone. Now for you to be able to distinguish the tones, there are three types of basic tones. One is that the tone is a positive tone. That means the author has a positive tone overall. It could be that the author has a very neutral tone, and then the author may have a negative tone. Now within these itself, for example, if you're talking about positive tone, now positive tone also may have certain degrees of positivity. So for example, the author could be very assertive in what he's saying. That is also a positive tone. The author may be, let's say, appreciative of certain efforts that a company or let's say the government have taken. So you may say, okay, the author is appreciative. But the author could also be the extreme of positive. It could be eulogical or laudatory, meaning he's just singing praise and only talking positive about, a particular aspect. It could be about an author, it could be about a particular player, it could be about government, whatever it is. So these are all positive tones, but then in positive also you should be able to understand the difference between the degrees of these different words. Now neutral standpoint is that most of the good authors that you will see in the newspaper or otherwise, they usually will take a very neutral approach. That means they will be very objective. So if they're talking about, let's say, a particular act, let's say CAA, right? So they'll talk about the negative side of things. They may also talk about the positive side of things, but they may not really pass their judgment or opinion. It's up to you, but they'll be able to show you the two sides of the coin very well. So that's an objective tone, right? The disinterested tone, right? So these are different words you can give to the neutral tone. It could also be certain factual tones. That means it's really fact based and just data, but he's not giving any opinion as to what the author thinks on that particular topic. Now in terms of negative tone, there could be some negative tones as well. So for example, tone could be he's little pessimistic about a new approach, let's say, that people are suggesting we should take. Now it could also be he is very critical or cynical, right? Or extreme could also be that he is very condescending, right? That means any approach that the person is taking, let's say he's talking about the negative side of a certain corporate structure, right? So he's only talking about negative things. So these are the different degrees of negativity also. So these are how you can answer the tone questions. Now what is important for you to do is that if you have to crack these questions, get basic understanding of tones. That means just Google the types of tones of passages and you'll get the words. So you should be familiar with those words. If you're not familiar with those words, it could be a problem. So it may boil down to really vocabulary in those questions. And also pay special attention to the choice of words that the author is using. Now these are questions on tones. Now what is structure? Structure again, so for example, if you're given, let's say, a passage and let's say there are 4 paragraphs in that passage, you should see how the arguments are flowing. That means how the arguments are constructed. It could be that the author is talking about cause of some natural disaster and then he's telling, okay, because of this will happen, right? It could be anything. It could be earthquake, it could be global warming or anything like that. Or he could also talk really in comparison terms. That means he's really using comparison and contrast to prove his point. Or it could be that he gives you, starts with a problem statement and then ultimately is giving you some solution to that. Now these are nothing but ways how the passage could be structured. So these are the 3 types of questions that you can get which check your high level understanding of the passage. Now with this, let's actually practice some questions so that you feel confident after watching this video. So let's say here is a passage for you and there is one question on the same. So I'll start the timer and you may want to read the passage and then answer this question. Okay, last 5 seconds. I hope you've read the passage. Okay, so what's the question on the passage? The question says, what is the main concern of the author? So really the overall understanding of the passage is what this question is testing. Now, if you've read the passage carefully, you will notice that, okay, what is really the main concern of the passage? Something that's repetitive, something that he is talking about again and again. Now, if you see in this passage, after reading the first paragraph, you may not have a great understanding of the main concern of the author, but then he comes to it ultimately, right? It says, it was then I realized to my horror that I had forgotten how to write. Now, and then he talks about my entire existence is on computer, this, that, emails, etc. And then he talks about a poll also was conducted of 1000 teens by the stationers, and they found out that they've never used, a pen, very rarely do they write, etc., etc. So what's the main concern of the author? That the teens use social network for communication. Now he did mention that the teens use social network, but is that the main concern? No, that's a side issue, right? The teens use mobile phones, right? So mobile phones was mentioned, but again, that's a side issue, right? Teens use computer, again, he's mentioned that, but are these the main concern, the central idea? No. The main concern is that the teens have forgotten the art of handwriting, and this is what he's been mentioning. And even if you see the last paragraph, he says handwriting is one of the most creative outlets we have and should be given the same importance, etc., etc. So it is option D. So ultimately, these questions which test you on overall understanding, what becomes very important is the scope of the passage. That means whenever you are marking an option, just make sure that your options are all inclusive. That is, your option really takes care of the scope, right? If you've not written handwriting for a passage like that, and if that's not coming in your main concern, that means you are really way wrong, right? So these are some important things to remember. Now let's look at this second passage and try to find out what is the main focus of the passage here. Okay, last 5 seconds. All right, so I hope you've read the passage. Now the question is, what is the main focus of the passage, right? So the main focus of the passage is on what? Is it resolution of water conflicts? Is it encouraging bilateral cooperation? Is it management of water as a valuable resource? There is river interlinking. There are multiple things that is being talked about, but then where heads of this thing came together to discuss the mankind's most valuable resource, right? And it was about sharing water. So water is something that's throughout there in the passage, right? And then finally he says fight against contamination of riverbeds, and then he talks about mankind is faced with two paths. Water is too powerful to be fought over and too valuable a resource to be lost. So what is the main focus of the passage? Is it resolution of water conflicts? Okay, maybe. Let's look at another option. We'll reject to select. Encouraging bilateral cooperation. Now, encouraging bilateral cooperation over what? So, a very important point that this one's missing, right? River interlinking. Is it about rivers and interlinking? Probably not, right? But it's about management of water as a valuable resource. So, either of these two options. Now, if you look at the overall passage, it's not just about that, they're talking about a water conflict and how to resolve it throughout the passage, but it's at an overall level that, okay, how water is an important resource and something that should be managed properly. So therefore, if you look at the scope, I would say C is a better option, right? So I hope you got a good understanding of these high level questions which check your overall understanding, and I hope you found the video helpful. And yes, don't forget to subscribe, like and follow our channel. Also, you can go to our website for free resources, www.stepuplearning.net. Thanks for watching the video, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.